the conclusion. So I'm going to write the conclusion of this essay. So I just wrote a phrase, you know, makes you want to strap on my buckles and boots. Remember buckles we talk about? And then let's look through what we quoted. The flags, which we didn't mention flags. You know, we can make slight new arguments, but we really don't want to. We really want to just wrap it up. So yeah, let's work for giants. Flags. Okay, so Walt Whitman's drum taps first those songs for a prelude. Has a features, right? When he's active verbs instead of is or has, features a speaker who is delighted at the prospect of Manhattan's denizens going to war. And we could say scenes here. Because we're not arguing anymore. Like, it's kind of hard to explain. Like, I guess it's not a huge deal. You could say is delighted, but then, you know, the question, even though we just argued a whole bunch of that, right here actually would be a good place to say seems. He seems delighted at the prospect of Manhattan's denizens going to war. While the speaker, again, we don't want to say he, she. At least when looking at the word choice and I don't think we're going to use, I think we said personification. We can say line breaks. There's a lot more personification in the poem, but we just decided not to talk about that. So let's copy this. Now we're not going to say this exact same thing in the end, but it's good to look at it. Basically, gonna tell them what we're going to say, including our thesis. Say it, defending our thesis every step of the way, and then tell them what we said, and restate the thesis, and throw a little flourish at the end. Either zoom in or zoom out normally. Maybe make one more point, one more like interesting, intriguing point, and then you're out. The word choice. That is evidenced throughout the poem. Here's where we can say indeed. Indeed. But again, we don't want to use it more than once, maybe twice. Indeed, even if it's not elated. So instead of saying prospect, saying the notion. That the notion of This New York City boroughs citizens taking up arms and advancing to meet the coming enemy. In battle. Again, we're using sort of the language, but now we're putting it in our own words. We're just throwing it all out there. We're like, yeah, taking up arms, advancing, and advancing to meet the coming enemy in battle. Remember, battle, that was one of the words as well. Is not positively elated. We can be a little bit more creative in terms of our adjectives and adverbs in the conclusion. The regardless is a clear emphasis on the inherent ability, on the innate ability of war. We're going to change the phrase a little bit to bring, remember, community members together from all walks of life, occupations, age ranges, etc. together. Again, we're wrapping everything up, everything we were talking about. Different walks of life, different occupations. Age ranges, we can say. Demographics, yeah, etc. together. And fight and support a single collective cause. The regardless is a clear emphasis in the poem. So you say in and then on. Features a clear emphasis. The poem, regardless, even though we said features, presents, so we'll change that up, presents a speaker. Indeed, even if the speaker doesn't positively lay out the notion of states purposes, taking up one's events. The poem, regardless, features clear emphasis on the inability of war, bring community members from all walks of life, occupations, fight. It's a long sentence. Together in order to fight. Hence, the speaker, at a minimum, Seems it's a speaker. To focus on these more benign, these more positive aspects of war, rather than focusing on the obvious negative, the perhaps obvious. Yeah, that's obvious. The more negative, like I don't want to use e.g. in a conclusion if I can help it. No more negative aspects of war. Like such as very bloodshed and death, such as the bloody violence. It's so often accompanies the theater of war. Using that word theater, he's talking about the theater of peace. But we don't really talk about that. We don't talk about the theater of peace. We decided not to focus on that in this essay. So let's not do the theater of war. That accompanies the experience of war. And then now you can mention the reader. The reader is granted myriad images. And again, we go back to our thesis. Through the word choice, the reader is granted myriad vivid images, that of soldiers gearing up to go to battle, that of people cheering on these young recruits, right? When he uses the same phrases, but just put them in our words now. People cheering on these young recruits. And even that of flags waving in front of all the homes and offices that adorn Manhattan's city streets. So here's where you can say I if you want to in the conclusion. The poem was such a let's look up clarion call. Clarion call is something that's like, it's like kind of a social thing. It's a clarion call for social change. I don't know if this is necessarily a clarion call. Yeah, request for action, right? Clarion call to young people to join the party. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because we're talking about active. The poem, Whitman's poem, Civil War poem, reads as a clarion call for Manhattanites to leap into the war efforts. And though I am reading this over 100 years later, he almost, although I'm reading this as a pacifist, over 100 years later, he almost made me want to strap on my buckles and boots and fight for old Manhattan. Okay, so this isn't the greatest conclusion in the world. I didn't make any, otherworldly epiphanies. I could have said something like, war is better than peace, or war is, but I didn't want to, you generally don't want to, take a leap. In the conclusion, if you've got enough meat there, and if you've done a good enough job, that you can basically state all of these things and write a, three, preferably four sentences or more, 4 sentences or more conclusion. You got something there. But if you can do 5 or 7, it's even better. But you definitely don't want to have a conclusion be like 2 or 3. 2 or 3 is really short. You wanna figure out how to circle the wagon, bring in words and language that maybe is featured in the poem, and throw it into your conclusion as your words. It's sort of like if you're giving a speech at the end of or like at the end of a case and you're a lawyer. You want to wrap up all of the high points and sort of remind the jury or remind the judge, like, here are the main points of why I think my client is innocent, or why I think that client is like guilty. So your closing statement. So this is sort of the same thing, but now we want to put this in our words, and we don't want to introduce any new argument, even though we say who seems delighted. And then we also back off a bit. You're like, even if the speaker is not positively elated at the notion of, you're sort of having a conversation, but you're still keeping it in that same vein. And you're making it interesting, right? You're adding a little bit of nuance, and you're making it. And here is where it's a little bit. You can be a little bit more argumentative. Whereas during the body, you just want to state, he's talking about this and this. He's talking about this and this. Speaker's talking about this and this. Whereas here, you can have a little bit more of a push pull, and it's kind of hard to describe this, like what this is, like how to create a nuanced argument, or how to get a little bit more conversational in a conclusion. Um, but this is sort of, I think this is a good conclusion. Um, and it's very right down the middle, right? This goes exactly to our thesis, and we restated our thesis, and then we reminded the reader that the word choice, line breaks, and personification, in the same order: word choice, line breaks, personification. And so the last video we're going to go over, we're going to do the edits, and then we'll be done. Thank you very much.